My son once held my hand and said, "Mother, I will always protect you." Years later, he looked me in the eyes and told me to sell the home where I raised him. He said it was time to let go. He said I was too old to keep it. He said he was doing me a favor. But what he did not know was that I had already seen the papers. I had already heard the whispers. And I had already made a choice. I would not beg. I would not cry. I would not lose everything I had built. Because I am not just someone's mother. I am a woman who knows how to survive. And if my son believed I was weak, he would soon discover something else. I had just bought his company, and he had no idea who owned it now. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe, because tomorrow I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Margaret. I am 58 years old, and for most of my life I have lived in the same house. It is a modest 2-story home with blue shutters and a front porch that creaks when you step onto it. The garden is not as tidy as it once was, but the roses still bloom every spring, just like they always have. My favorite chair sits by the living room window, where the sun comes in every morning and warms the old wooden floor. This house holds memories. Thousands of them. Laughter at birthday parties, tears during late-night phone calls, the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings. And silence, too. The kind of silence that settles after everyone leaves. I live here alone now. My husband, Daniel, passed away 7 years ago. He was kind, patient, and loved to hum old jazz tunes while fixing anything that broke. After he left, the house felt emptier, but it never felt cold. It still holds his warmth. My son Ethan is grown. He lives in the city now, busy, successful, always rushing somewhere. He used to visit every weekend. Now, it is once a month, sometimes less. But I do not complain. That is what mothers do, is it not? We smile when our children are too busy. We nod and say, "I understand." We hide the ache in our hearts. Most mornings I begin the day with a cup of tea and a walk around the backyard. The birds sing the same songs, and the breeze carries the scent of lavender. Sometimes I imagine I can hear Daniel's footsteps beside me. Sometimes I speak to him. "Another quiet day," I whisper. Ethan is doing well, I think. I spend my afternoons tending to the garden, reading, or helping at the local library. The other women there are sweet. They think I am calm and steady. And I am. At least I try to be. I keep my routines simple. Breakfast at 7, a walk at 8, cleaning, reading, resting. Small things, gentle things. My home is not just a place. It is a part of me. Each room tells a story. The kitchen where Ethan made his first scrambled eggs, burnt and proud. The hallway where I paced back and forth, waiting for Daniel to return from surgery. The staircase where our dog Jasper used to wait for Ethan to come home from school. There is a crack in the living room wall from the time Ethan and his friends played indoor soccer. I never fixed it. I could not. It made me smile every time I looked at it. This is my life. It is quiet. Sometimes lonely. But it is mine. And in all this time, I have held on to one simple truth. I gave everything I had to my family. My love, my time, my strength. And I asked for very little in return. So when Ethan called me that morning, when he said, "Mother, We need to talk about the house. I did not think anything of it. I thought maybe he wanted to help fix the roof. Or perhaps he wanted to bring his daughter, Emily, over to play in the garden. She loves it here. She calls it Grandma's magic yard. I made a fresh pot of tea and set out 2 cups. I even baked those little lemon cookies he used to love. When his car pulled into the driveway, I watched him from the window. He looked sharp in his gray suit, confident, important. He always does. But something was different that day. He did not look up at the house the way he used to. He did not pause. He did not smile. He walked straight to the door. Quick, focused. I opened it before he could knock. "Ethan," I said softly. He kissed my cheek. "Hi, Mother," he replied. His voice was steady, too steady. We sat in the kitchen. I poured the tea. He did not touch the cookies. Then, without any warmth, he said it. "Mother, it is time for you to sell the house." Just like that. The room went still. The warmth left my hands. My heart beat a little slower, a little louder. I looked at him. I waited for a smile, a laugh, a just kidding, but it never came. And in that moment, I could feel something changing. I sat there in silence, staring at my son. The tea on the table had gone cold. He had not taken a sip. He had not touched a single cookie. "Sell the house?" I asked, even though I had heard him clearly. He nodded once, like it was the most logical thing in the world. "As you get older, Mother, you should not have to take care of a place this big. It is too much. Too many stairs. Too much to clean. It is time." I blinked. My fingers tightened around the teacup. Too many stairs? Too much to clean? Since when had he cared about those things? "I am managing just fine," I said gently. "The house gives me purpose. I like taking care of it." Ethan gave me a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I know you do," he said. "But I have been thinking about your future, about what is best for you." That word, best, sat in my chest like a stone. He talked for a while after that, about the market, about timing, about how smart it would be to sell now, before property taxes went up. His voice was calm. His tone was practiced. Too practiced. He was not speaking to me like a son. He was speaking to me like a businessman. I studied his face while he spoke. His jaw was tight. His eyes moved too quickly. And he avoided looking at the fireplace where Daniel's old photograph still sat. That told me everything I needed to know. He was not thinking about what was best for me. He was thinking about something else. I did not argue. Not then. Instead, I listened. I nodded. I even smiled a little, just to keep the peace. But something deep inside me shifted. Something small and quiet, like the sound of a window closing. After he left, I sat in the same chair for a long time. The house felt different. Not smaller, not colder. Just unfamiliar. Like I was looking at it through someone else's eyes. Walked from room to room, slowly. The kitchen, with its worn-out tile and faded curtains. The dining room, where we had celebrated every one of Ethan's birthdays until he turned 16 and decided parties were childish. The den, where Daniel and I had fallen asleep on the couch more times than I could count. I placed my hand on the wall beside the stairs. It was solid, strong, just like it had always been. And yet, something had changed. That evening I made myself a simple dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, like I used to make for Ethan when he had a cold. I turned on the radio, but the music felt too loud, so I turned it off again. I tried to read, but the words blurred together. I tried to knit, but my fingers kept slipping. I could not stop hearing his voice in my head. It is time, as if my time was over, as if the life I had built, the memories I had kept, the love I had poured into every corner of this home, meant nothing now. I stood at the kitchen window and looked out into the yard. The porch light flickered gently. The roses had begun to close for the night. For a moment, I thought I saw Daniel standing near the gate, just like he used to when waiting for Ethan to come home. I closed my eyes. "Do you think he means it?" I whispered into the silence. "Do you think our son really wants me to leave?" No answer came, just the soft creak of the house settling. I walked upstairs, brushing my hand along the railing as I climbed. My bedroom still smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. I changed into my nightgown and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space beside me. For the first time in months, I did not feel peaceful. I did not feel calm. I felt watched. Not by someone outside, by time, by change, by something, creeping closer that I could not name. And as I pulled the blanket over my legs and turned off the lamp, a single thought came to me, clear and sharp. I could feel something changing. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun had not yet reached the window, and the room was still filled with soft shadows. I sat up slowly, unsure of what had disturbed my sleep. My heart was beating faster than normal, like I had been running in a dream I could not remember. I walked to the window and opened the curtains. The world outside looked the same trees, the same garden, the same quiet street. But something inside me felt different. I could not name it. I could not explain it. It was like trying to remember a face you once knew very well but had not seen in years. The shape was there, but the details were gone. I made tea, as I always did. I watered the plants. I checked the mailbox. I folded laundry. But all the while, Ethan's words echoed in my mind. It is time. Time for what? For me to disappear? To shrink my life down to something easier, quieter, smaller? I had always thought of my home as a comfort, not a burden. Had I been wrong? After lunch, I sat on the back porch with my knitting. The air was warm, but I felt cold. I tried to count stitches, but I lost track again and again. Eventually I gave up and placed the needles down. My thoughts would not stop racing. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe the house was too much. Maybe I had been clinging to something simply because I was afraid to let go. Or maybe I had missed something important. I began to wonder. Why now? Why was he suddenly so interested in my home after all this time? He had never mentioned selling it before. Not once. He had always said I should keep it as long as I wanted. He had even told Emily she could visit Grandma's house every summer. So what had changed? I picked up my phone and stared at it. Should I call him? Should I ask? But what would I say? "Son, why do you want me gone?" The thought made my throat tighten. No, I could not ask that. I was not ready for the answer. Instead, I called my friend Claire. Claire and I had known each other since we were 21. We met at a book club, long before we had husbands or children or gray hair. We had shared everything: laughs, secrets, tears, even vacations. She was the only one who still truly knew me. "Margaret," she said warmly when she answered. "I was just thinking about you." I smiled, even though she could not see me. "You always say that." Because it is always true. We talked about small things at first. The weather, a new bakery that had opened down the road, her cat's latest adventure with the curtains. But I could not keep the weight off my voice. I think she heard it. After a while, she asked, "What is wrong?" I hesitated. Then the words poured out, carefully, slowly. I told her what Ethan had said. I told her how he looked, how he spoke, how something felt off, but I could not explain it. There was a long pause on the other end, and then she said, "Margaret, are you sure he is thinking about your needs and not his own?" That question stayed with me. It circled me like a soft wind, brushing past my thoughts again and again. Was Ethan worried about me, or was there something else behind his urgency? I walked through the house again later that afternoon, this time seeing it differently. Looked at the bookshelf Ethan had helped Daniel build. I looked at the guest room where Emily had drawn on the walls with markers. I looked at the attic door, the one Ethan had not been inside for years. Memories lived in every part of this home. It was not just a house. It was my story. Could he really want me to erase it? I sat down again, this time in Daniel's old armchair. It still smelled faintly of aftershave and old books. I leaned back and closed my eyes. I was confused. I was hurt. But more than anything, I was beginning to feel unsure of what I thought I knew. The kind of unsure that creeps up slowly. The kind that whispers, "Pay attention." And somewhere deep, inside me, a quiet voice rose up. It said, "You need to look closer. You need to find out what is really going on." The next few days passed slowly. I tried to act as if everything was normal, but it was not. Something invisible had shifted between Ethan and me. I felt it in the pauses during our phone calls. I felt it in the silence between his sentences. He had started calling less often, and when he did call, our conversations felt shorter, colder. Still, I kept telling myself, he is my son. He would not do anything to hurt me. He must be thinking of what is best. He loves me. He always has. I wanted to trust him. I needed to trust him. After all, this was the same boy who used to fall, asleep on my lap with a picture book still open in his little hands. The same boy who cried when he lost his first tooth. Not because it hurt, but because he thought he was falling apart. The same boy who once said, "When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house so you never have to work again." Now he wanted me to sell the only home I had ever felt safe in. Still, I told myself, maybe he was just trying to help in his own way. I decided to invite him over again. I called and offered to make his favorite dinner, chicken and dumplings, with apple pie for dessert. To my surprise, he said yes. He arrived late, with his shirt untucked and his phone in his hand. He gave me a quick hug, but his eyes went straight to the kitchen. I noticed he barely looked around the house, not even at the wall where I had hung his graduation photo, not even at the piano he used to play for hours. Dinner was warm and simple. The food was just like he remembered it, but he barely ate. He kept glancing at his phone, typing between bites. I watched him, trying to read something in his face. His eyes looked tired. His shoulders were tense. But there was something else, something behind his smile, a kind of hurry, a pressure. He asked me about the house again. He said things like, "You could live somewhere closer to Emily, and there is a great retirement community with really nice people." I told him I appreciated his concern, but I was not ready to make any changes. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when you are trying to hide disappointment. "I only want what is best for you, Mom," he said. I nodded slowly. I know. But the words felt like pieces of glass in my throat. After dessert, we sat in the living room. He scrolled through his phone while I watched the fire. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he looked up and asked, "Have you thought about what we discussed?" I looked at him carefully. "I have." "And?" I paused. "I trust you, Ethan. I know you want me to be safe and comfortable. I believe that." His expression softened. He reached over and took my hand. "Of course I do," he said. "You have always taken care of everyone else. Let me take care of you now." For a moment, I wanted to believe him completely. I wanted to forget my doubts, to silence the voice inside me that kept saying, "Something is wrong." I wanted to look at my son and see only love. So I nodded. "I will think about it." He squeezed my hand, and then, just like that, he stood up. "I should get going," he said. "I have a few calls tonight." I walked him to the door. He kissed my cheek and said, "Talk soon, Mom." I watched him walk down the steps to his car. He did not turn back. After he left, I sat on the porch in the quiet dark. The stars were beginning to come out. The wind moved gently through the trees. It should have been a peaceful night, but I could not shake the unease in my chest. I wanted to trust him. But something about his eyes, something about his urgency, something about the way he avoided the photographs on the wall, it stayed with me. That night, I lay in bed with my eyes open, listening, waiting. For what? I did not know. But deep down, something told me. The truth was on its way, and when it arrived, it would change everything. The next morning, I went to the small cafe near the library. It was a quiet place with soft music and warm lighting. The kind of place where people spoke gently and time seemed to move a little slower. Claire was already there, sitting at our usual table by the window. She had 2 cups of tea waiting, one for her and one for me, just the way I liked it. No sugar, a little milk. She smiled when she saw me, but as I sat down, her smile faded a little. "You look tired," she said softly. "I am," I replied. I could not sleep much. She looked at me closely, then reached across the table and held my hand. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her what Ethan had said about selling the house. I told her about the way he looked at me, about how he barely touched his dinner, how he seemed in a hurry, and how I wanted to trust him. But something did not feel right. Claire listened without interrupting, Her fingers gently rubbed mine as I spoke. When I finished, she sat back and sighed. "Margaret," she said, "do you remember what happened to Linda?" I paused. "Your cousin?" She nodded. "She sold her house, too. Said her son convinced her it was the smart thing to do. Said he would handle everything. Said he was just looking out for her." "And?" I asked. Claire's voice dropped lower. "He sold it fast. Below market value, then put her in an apartment 2 towns away, far from everyone she knew. Told her it was just temporary." I could feel the chill in her voice. But it was not temporary. He never visited, never called. And when she asked about the money, he said most of it had gone into taxes and repairs. My eyes widened. "You think Ethan would do something like that?" Claire shook her head slowly. "I do not want to believe it. And I am not saying he will. But I am saying, be careful. Do not let love blind you." Those words hit something deep in me. Do not let love blind you. I looked out the window. A young mother walked by with her child. The little boy was laughing, pointing at birds in the tree. She held his hand tightly, lovingly. I remembered doing that with Ethan. I remembered how, when he was small, he used to look up at me like I was the only safe place in the world. Had I been blind because of that memory? Was I still seeing the child instead of the man? Claire continued, "I know he is your son. I know you love him more than anything. But love does not mean giving away your life just because someone asks you to." I nodded slowly, the words sinking in. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "Listen to your instinct. You said something feels wrong. Do not ignore that voice." I wrapped both hands around my teacup. It was warm and comforting. But my stomach felt tight, like something was curling up inside me, preparing for a storm. "What should I do?" I asked. Claire sat back. "You do not have to do anything yet. Just watch, listen, ask questions, and do not sign anything no matter what he says." I laughed softly, though there was no joy in it. I would never sign anything without reading it. Claire raised an eyebrow. "You would be surprised how many mothers do." We sat in silence for a while, watching the street, sipping tea. Before I left, she hugged me tightly. "You are strong, Margaret. Do not let anyone make you forget that." As I walked home, her words echoed in my mind. Do not let love blind you. It was a warning. A quiet one. A kind one. But a warning all the same. And, deep in my heart, something was waking up. Not anger. Not fear. It was awareness. And it was growing. When I got home, I stood in the hallway for a long moment. I looked at the family photos on the wall, at Ethan's graduation picture, at Daniel's wedding photo, at a small drawing Emily had made of me, her super grandma, in a cape and boots. I touched the frame gently. This was my life. This was my home. And suddenly, I knew I had to be more careful. The warning had come. Now it was time to listen. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was tired. That maybe Claire had just gotten into my head with that story about her cousin. Ethan was my son. He had always been a good boy. He had worked hard in school, built a business, supported his family. He called me often, sent birthday cards, asked how I was doing. So why did my heart feel heavy every time I looked at him now? I did not want to feel this way. I did not want to doubt my own child. So I tried to push the thoughts away. I cleaned the kitchen. I watered the plants. I reorganized the linen closet. I made soup and froze half of it. I even polished the old mirror in the hallway, though I had not touched it in years. Busy hands, quiet mind. That was the idea, but it did not work. Late at night, I sat in bed, the silence pressing in on me like a thick blanket. The house creaked softly, as if it too was trying to speak. I looked at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You are overthinking. Everything is fine." Still, something stayed with me. A tiny discomfort, like a stone in my shoe. Small, easy to ignore, but always there. One morning I got a message from Ethan. "Mom, let's talk again soon. I want to explain more about the idea. Love you." I stared at those words. Explain more about the idea. He was still thinking about it, still planning something, still talking like the house was a business deal. I typed a reply, then deleted. It typed again, deleted again. Finally, I wrote, "Okay, let me know when. Simple, careful, neutral." I did not want to sound too open, but I did not want to sound suspicious either. Later that day, I saw a neighbor while walking around the garden. Her name was Susan. She had moved in 2 years ago with her husband and their little dog. We often waved at each other, sometimes stopped, to chat about flowers or the weather. Today she smiled and said, "You are out early." "Yes," I said, "just trying to clear my head." She looked at me kindly. "You okay?" Something about the way she asked it. So gentle, so human. It almost made me cry. "I am just thinking about some things," I replied. She nodded. "That time of year, maybe. Spring always makes us clean out more than just closets." I smiled at that. It was true. Spring wakes things up, sometimes even old wounds. After she left, I sat on the garden bench. I watched the bees dance from flower to flower. I listened to the wind in the trees, and I thought about what I was doing. I was pretending everything was fine, pretending I could not feel the distance between Ethan and me, pretending his words had not changed, but they had. He did not talk to me the same way anymore. He used to ask me how I slept, what I had for breakfast, if I had finished that puzzle I had been working on. Now he only talked about ideas. Now he looked at me like I was holding something he needed. I folded my hands in my lap. Claire's words came back again, clear as day. "Do not let love blind you." But I was still trying to close my eyes. I did not want to believe anything bad about my son. Not yet. Not ever, if I could help it. That night I cooked a simple dinner, pasta with mushrooms and cream sauce. It was one of Ethan's favorites when he was younger. I almost smiled thinking of him as a little boy, asking for more cheese on top, then licking the plate when he thought I was not looking. I sat down to eat alone. The table felt too big. The house felt too quiet. I looked at the empty seat across from me. I closed my eyes, and I whispered, "Please, do not let this be what I think it is." But even as I said it, I knew. The stone in my shoe was still there, and it was not going away. The next Sunday, Ethan came over for lunch. He brought flowers. Lilies, my favorite. I smiled when I saw them, even though I knew why he had chosen them. He always brought lilies when he needed something, when he was 16 and wanted to borrow the car for a weekend trip with his friends. He brought lilies. When he was 22 and had failed a class in college, he brought lilies. And now, here they were again, soft, sweet, and silent between us. I took the flowers with a small thank you and walked to the kitchen to find a vase. My hands moved slowly. My heart moved slower. As I arranged the stems, I felt his eyes on me. I turned. He was watching me, not with love, not with the warm smile I remembered. There was calculation in his gaze, a stillness, like he was waiting for the right moment to say something, or ask for something big. We sat down to eat. I had made roasted chicken with lemon and rosemary, mashed potatoes, and a green salad. He complimented the food. He always did. But there was something missing in his voice. The warmth was not there. It was polite, careful, planned. Between bites, we talked about small things. The weather, his work, the new neighbors who had just moved in down the street. But none of it felt real. There was space between his words, space where honesty used to live. When he looked at me, his eyes flicked away too fast, like he did not want to meet my gaze for too long, like he might see something he did not want to face, or like I might see too much in him. After we finished eating, we sat in the living room with tea. That was when he brought it up again. "Mom," he said, stirring sugar into his cup, "have you given more thought to what we talked about?" I did not answer right away. He continued, "I just think it is a smart move. The house is beautiful, but it is a lot for one person. You could be somewhere easier, safer." I watched him closely. He did not look up from his cup. I waited. Finally, I said, "I have lived in this house for 36 years. He nodded. No, I just mean, times are changing." I took a sip of my tea. "And who would buy it?" He paused, then said, "There are investors, people I know." That was the first time I felt a chill run down my spine. Investors, people he knew, not strangers. He had thought about this. He had spoken to people, made plans. Behind my back. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice calm, "you are not just thinking about me, are you?" His head snapped up. "What?" "Of course I am." But his eyes did not match his words. They flickered, just for a second, then looked past me. I saw something in that moment that broke my heart. A part of him was not here as my son. He was here as something else. A businessman. Someone who wanted something. Someone who had already decided what he would do if I said no. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. The sky was cloudy. Rain threatened the horizon. Behind me, I heard him shift in his seat. Then he said, "I just want what is best for you." I turned back to face him. "No," I said. "You want what is best for you." The room went quiet. He looked shocked, maybe even hurt. But I did not take the words back. I could not. Because in that moment, I knew them to be true. I had raised that boy. I had watched him take his first steps, heard his first words, stayed up with him during fevers, clapped at school, plays, brought cupcakes to class on his birthday. I knew him, and I knew this was not about me. This was about something else. Money, Power, control. He stood up slowly. Maybe we should talk another time. I nodded. He walked to the door, then turned. Mom, I really do care. I looked at him, but I said nothing. He left. I stood there for a long time, not moving, just feeling the weight of his gaze, even after he was gone, because it was not the look of a son who loved his mother. It was the look of a man who saw something he wanted, and that something was mine. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts circling like tired birds that could not land. I kept thinking about his face, his voice, the way his eyes had shifted when I mentioned the house. I did not want to believe it, but I had to. Something was wrong. I needed to know what it was. By morning, I had made up my mind. I would ask him, directly, clearly, without emotion in my voice. I would not accuse. I would not cry. I would not beg. I would simply ask for the truth. I called him after breakfast. His voice was cheerful, as if nothing had happened. Hi, Mom. Everything okay? Yes, I said. But I would like to meet. Just for a short while. There is something I want to talk about. There was a pause. Then he said, Sure. How about that little cafe near your place? 1:00, I said. I wore my gray coat and brought my old leather purse, the one with the silver clasp that Ethan had always liked as a child. He used to play with the clasp while sitting on my lap in church. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table by the window. The waitress brought me tea. I did not touch it. Ethan arrived a few minutes later, smiling as if everything were normal. He hugged me. I let him, but I did not smile back. We sat down. He ordered a coffee. He looked relaxed, almost too relaxed. I took a deep breath. Then I said, Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. He nodded slowly. Of course. I held his gaze. Did you speak to anyone about buying my house? His face changed. Not much, but enough. His mouth opened slightly. His eyes blinked once. His fingers tapped the side of the coffee cup. He said, Why do you ask that? I leaned forward. Because I know you, Ethan. I know when you are not telling me everything. You brought it up too many times. You spoke about investors. You had answers ready. It felt like a plan, not a suggestion. He looked down at his hands. Then, he said, I was just exploring options. That is all. Options? I asked. He sighed. I have a friend. He works in property development. He mentioned the area, said it was growing fast. He asked if I knew anyone with land. I told him about your house. Just casually. My heart felt heavy. Did you tell him I might sell? He hesitated. Yes. I said it was possible. I closed my eyes for a moment, without asking me first. He leaned back in his chair, defensive now. I was trying to help. You live alone. The market is strong. It is a good time to move. Why is that wrong? I opened my eyes. Because it is my home, Ethan. My life. My memories. And you treated it like a business deal. He looked frustrated. I did not mean it that way. Then what did you mean? I asked. He rubbed his forehead. I do not know. I thought maybe if I could help you sell it, I could invest in something, maybe build something new. We could both benefit. There it was. The truth. This was not just about me. It was about him, his business, his ideas, his future. And I was a piece in that puzzle. I felt a deep ache in my chest, not because he wanted success, but because he had forgotten who I was. I was not just a homeowner. I was his mother. I had loved him through every storm. I had protected him, sacrificed for him, believed in him when he did not believe in himself. And now he saw my house as an asset, an opportunity. I looked at him, really looked. He was still my son, but he was not the boy who used to hold my hand and ask me to stay a little longer at bedtime. He was a man now, a man with his own ideas, his own world. And in that world, I was no longer in the center. I took a long sip of tea. It had gone cold. Then I said, "Thank you for being honest." Said nothing. I stood up. "I will not sell," I said quietly. "Not now. Not for you. Not for anyone." He nodded slowly. Then he asked, "Are you angry with me?" I looked at him one last time. "I am not angry," I said. "I am sad." Then I walked out of the cafe. The wind was sharp. The sky had started to darken. But I walked slowly, with my head held high, because I had asked for the truth, and now I knew it. After I left the cafe, the world seemed quieter. The usual sounds of the street, the cars, the chatter of people, the distant barking of dogs, felt muted, like everything was wrapped in a soft, thick fog. I walked slowly back home, but my mind was racing faster than my feet could carry me. I could not stop thinking about the conversation with Ethan. His words repeated in my head. I was just exploring options. I was trying to help. We could both benefit. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that he was trying to do what was best for both of us. But the feeling inside me was heavy and cold. It was not just sadness. It was confusion. And fear. I kept asking myself questions I did not want to answer. Had I raised him wrong? Was I blind to the way he really felt? Had he changed so much that I did not know him anymore? The truth was I did not know, and that scared me more than anything. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The rain had started softly, tapping against the window like quiet footsteps. I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders and looked out at the wet garden. I remembered the days when Ethan was small, how he used to run through that garden laughing and shouting, how his hands were sticky with chocolate and his clothes were never clean, how he had once told me, "Mom, you are my whole world." I wanted to believe those words still held meaning, but the way he looked at me now told a different story. The way he spoke was distant, like a stranger who shared my blood, but not my heart. I sat with my thoughts, and the night grew deeper. I tried to sleep, but the questions would not stop. I thought about my house, the walls that held so many memories, the kitchen where we baked cookies together, the fireplace where we told stories on cold winter nights. All of it felt fragile now, like glass ready to break. I thought about my own dreams, how I wanted to grow old in this house. how I imagined Ethan would visit often, how I believed family was forever. Now those dreams felt shaky. I wondered if I had been naive, if my love had blinded me to the truth. The hours passed slowly. At 3 a.m, I stood by the window, watching the rain fall in long, steady lines. I realized that my mind was not just restless, it was filled with fear of loss. Not just loss of a house, loss of connection, loss of trust, loss of the son I had known. I thought about calling a friend, someone to talk to, but the words did not come. I felt alone with the storm inside me. I did not cry. I just sat and watched the rain, and the silence spoke louder than any words. By dawn, I was exhausted, but no closer to peace. The questions were still there, and I knew they would be for a long time. Because sometimes, the hardest part is not the betrayal itself. It is the silence that follows. The silence where you wait for answers that might never come. The days that followed were heavy with silence. I felt a quiet pain settle deep inside me. It was not loud or sharp like anger. It was soft, but constant, like a small stone in my shoe that I could not remove. I went about my daily routine, but everything felt different. The sunlight through the window did not warm me as it used to. The smell of fresh coffee tasted dull. Even the sound of birds outside seemed distant. I found myself sitting alone more often. Sometimes in the garden, watching the flowers bend in the breeze, sometimes by the window, tracing raindrops as they slid down the glass. I cried quietly at night, not in big sobs, but small tears that came without warning. Tears for the son I loved, and the son who seemed so far away. Tears for the home that felt less like mine, and tears for the hope that was slowly fading. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned the house. I cooked meals. I read old letters and photographs, each one a reminder of better days. But the pain was still there. I did not tell anyone, not even my closest friends. I wanted to be strong, to carry this alone. But sometimes, strength is not about fighting. Sometimes it is about sitting quietly with your pain, accepting it, letting it be. One evening, the rain came again. I sat by the window and watched it fall. The world outside was gray and cold. But inside, I felt something stirring. A tiny spark. A faint hope. I realized that pain, as quiet as it was also a sign. A sign that I was still alive, still feeling, still fighting. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. I will not let this break me, I whispered to myself. I will find my way through. The road ahead was not clear, but I was ready to walk it, one slow step at a time. The quiet pain that settled in me after that rainy evening did not disappear. Instead, it grew, settling deep into my bones like a cold that no warm blanket could chase away. I realized something was no longer enough. I needed an answer. Not just small truths or half-hidden feelings. I needed the whole truth. I wanted to know why Ethan had pushed me to sell my home without talking to me first. I wanted to understand what had changed in him, or between us. I wanted to stop guessing and start healing, so I called him again. This time, my voice was steady, calm, but firm. I want to see you, I said. He agreed quickly. maybe too quickly. When we met, I could see the hesitation in his eyes. We sat in the same cafe, the one where I had first asked my question weeks before. I looked at him, searching for honesty, for something real. "I need you to tell me everything, Ethan," I said softly. He sighed, his hands trembling slightly as they held his coffee cup. "I am sorry, Mom," he said. "I did not want to hurt you." I waited. He swallowed hard, then spoke. "The company is in trouble," he said quietly. I blinked. "Trouble? What kind of trouble?" He looked down, ashamed. "We made some bad deals," he admitted. "Money problems." I felt a cold wave wash over me. "Why did you not tell me?" He shook his head. "I was scared. I thought if you knew, you would stop believing in me." I took a deep breath. "Ethan, I will always believe in you, but I cannot help if you hide things." He nodded. "I know." We sat in silence. The noise of the cafe faded into the background. I thought about everything he had told me. The fear, the mistakes, the pressure, the loneliness. I realized I had been so focused on protecting myself that I had not seen his pain, his struggle, the burden he carried silently. I reached out and placed my hand on his. "Thank you for telling me." He looked up, surprised. "I want to help," I said. "But I need honesty. No more secrets." He nodded slowly. For the first time, I feel like I can breathe. We talked for hours about the company, the debts, the hopes, about mistakes and forgiveness, about family and trust. That day, something changed. A wall I did not know was there began to crumble. Not all at once, but a little at a time. I still felt hurt, but I also felt hope. Hope that we could face this together. I walked home that evening feeling tired but lighter, because sometimes the hardest step is asking for the truth and finding the courage to listen. I remember the day I finally understood everything. It was not a sudden moment, like a lightning strike, but a slow unfolding, like the dawn breaking over a long, dark night. After my conversation with Ethan at the cafe, I began to dig deeper into the problems he faced. He had been honest with me about the trouble in his company, but there were many details he left out. I could sense the weight he carried, the shame he felt. I knew I had to face the truth for myself, not just through his words. I spent days reading documents, looking at numbers, and talking to people who worked for Ethan. I wanted to understand the full picture, the challenges, the decisions, the mistakes. I wanted to see what he had been protecting me from. The truth was painful. The company was on the brink of collapse. There were debts piling up. Some deals had gone wrong. Some trusted partners had betrayed them. The very foundation of what Ethan had built was shaking. But the deeper truth was more personal. Ethan was struggling to carry a burden far too heavy for one person alone. He was proud, yes, but also scared and alone. He did not want to admit defeat, especially not to me. I realized then that his push for me to sell the house was not about me or our relationship. It was about his desperation to find a way out. To keep the company alive, he needed help, but he did not know how to ask for it. That hurt me deeply, not because he had failed, but because he had been suffering in silence. I sat alone in my quiet living room one evening, surrounded by the photographs of better days. I thought about the boy who used to run through the garden, full of dreams and laughter. The man before me was still that boy, but life had worn him down. I thought about my own fears, of losing the house, of losing my son, of losing myself in the process. But I also thought about strength. Not the kind of strength that pushes others away, but the kind that reaches out, that admits weakness, and asks for support. I realized then that I did not want to lose Ethan. Not to money troubles, not to pride, not to silence. I wanted to be there for him, fully and completely. So I made a decision. I would help him save his company. Not because I wanted control or revenge, but because I loved him. Because family means standing together, even when it is hard, even when it is painful. The next day, I called. Ethan, when he answered, his voice was tired. "I want to meet," I said. We sat down again, this time with a plan. I told him I wanted to invest in the company, to buy enough shares to keep it alive. He was shocked. "I cannot ask you to do that," he said quietly. "You are my mother." "I know," I replied. "But sometimes, a mother's love means doing what is necessary." We talked late into the night. We made lists. We called advisors. We made promises. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope growing inside me. Knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges. There would be doubts. But I was ready to face them. Because I understood. I understood that love is not only about holding on. Sometimes it is about letting go of pride, about accepting help, and about fighting together. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt a quiet peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally understood where we needed to go, together. After I made the decision to help Ethan by buying shares of his company, I thought things would start to improve. I imagined us working side by side, rebuilding what had been broken. But life did not follow my plan. Sometimes, no matter how much you want to fix something, you have to walk away, even when your heart does not want to. In the beginning, Ethan seemed grateful. We had many long conversations about the future, about how to save the company and pay back debts. I listened carefully and tried to support him without judgment, but underneath his words, I could feel tension growing. It was in the little things, the way he avoided looking me in the eyes when we talked, the way his answers became shorter and less honest, the way he started making decisions without including me. I wanted to believe he was just stressed. I told myself it was normal when a business was in trouble. But the feeling inside me would not go away. Something was wrong. One afternoon, I went to the company office to surprise him. I thought a visit might lift his spirits and remind him that I was there for him. When I arrived, I was greeted by his assistant, who told me Ethan was not in the office. I waited. Minutes passed. Then someone came out and quietly said Ethan had left early. He had an important meeting. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Later that evening, I tried calling him. The phone went straight to voicemail. I sent a message but got no reply. That night, I lay awake, thinking about everything. The pain and confusion mixed inside me. I asked myself if I had made a mistake. Had I been too trusting? Had I missed the signs? The next day, I went back to the office. This time, I spoke to some employees I trusted. They told me things I had not expected. Ethan had been acting differently, secretive, distant. There were rumors about some decisions he had made without consulting anyone. I felt a sharp sting of betrayal. Not because of the rumors, but because I had believed in him. When Ethan finally returned my call, I asked him directly about what I had heard. His voice was cold. "I do not know what you are talking about," he said. "But I trusted you," I replied. There was silence, then a quiet voice. I did what I had to do. I did not understand what that meant. I wanted to ask more, but the words stuck in my throat. That night, I walked through the house alone. The walls echoed with memories. I remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, the times we had leaned on each other. Now, it felt empty. I realized I could no longer hold on to what was breaking me. I had to walk away. Not because I did not love him, but because love sometimes means letting go to protect yourself. I packed a small bag. Not many things, just the essentials. I left a note on the kitchen table. "I need time to heal. Please respect my space." I did not say goodbye. I did not argue or fight. I just walked away. The pain was sharp and raw. But in that moment, I felt a strange relief. I had taken control of my life again. I was choosing myself. Walking away was not easy. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. But it was necessary. Because staying in a place of hurt and mistrust would only break me further. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end. It is a new beginning." And with each step I took away from that house, I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten. I did not know what the future held, but I knew one thing clearly. I was not alone. I was still strong, and I would find my way back to peace. Even though I had walked away, the pain stayed. It was not the kind of pain that fades quickly. It lingered, quietly, like a shadow in the corners of my heart. I thought leaving would make things easier, but some hurts follow you no matter where you go. The first few days after I left the house were the hardest. I stayed with a friend in a small, cozy room that felt safe but unfamiliar. I tried to focus on small things, reading a book, drinking tea, taking walks. But inside, my mind was loud with questions and memories. I thought about Ethan, about how he had changed, about the secrets, about the betrayal. I felt anger rising, but also deep sadness. It hurt to know that someone you love can cause so much pain. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? Where had we lost each other? Sometimes, late at night, I would lie awake and cry silently. I did not want anyone to hear me. I felt alone, even though I was surrounded by friends and family. Pain has a way of isolating you, even in a crowd. I missed my home. Not just the house, but the life I had built there. The quiet mornings with coffee, the familiar creak of the wooden floor, the garden that bloomed with the seasons. Those things reminded me of better times. Times before trust was broken. But I also knew I could not go back. The house had become a symbol of what I had lost. It was full of memories, both good and bad, and staying there would only bring more pain. I tried to keep busy. I helped a local charity, volunteered at the community center, and spent more time with old friends. These activities gave me small moments of peace. But even in those moments, the pain stayed just beneath the surface. I learned that pain is not something you can rush or ignore. It needs time to heal. And healing is not a straight path. Some days are better, some are harder. I also learned to be gentle with myself. I stopped blaming myself for what happened. I reminded myself that everyone makes mistakes, even those we love most. One afternoon, while sitting in a quiet park, I watched the leaves fall from the trees. They drifted slowly, softly to the ground. It was a simple moment, but it helped me understand something important. Like the leaves, pain is a natural part of life. It comes and goes, but it also makes room for new growth. I promised myself that I would keep moving forward, even when it felt hard. I would let the pain stay for a while, but I would not let it take over my life. I was learning to live with the pain, not be controlled by it. And in that quiet acceptance, I found a small spark of hope, a hope that someday the pain would soften and I would find joy again. Because even when the pain stays, life goes on. I miss the past. Sometimes the memories come to me like a gentle wave, soft, warm, and full of light. I remember the laughter we shared around the kitchen table, the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven, the way Ethan would smile when he talked about his dreams. Those moments feel like a different life now, a life before everything changed. When I look back, I see how simple things once were, how the house felt alive with hope and love, how we believed in each other without question. But now, those memories bring a bittersweet ache. They remind me of what I have lost and what may never come back. I often find myself staring out the window, watching the seasons change. Leaves fall. Snow blankets the ground. Spring flowers bloom again. Each cycle seems to whisper a quiet message that time moves on, with or without us. One evening, I found an old photo album tucked away in a drawer. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the fragile pages. There we were, smiling, carefree, and full of life. I traced my fingers over the pictures, feeling a strange mix of joy and sorrow. The past was beautiful, but it was also gone. I cried softly that night, not because I wanted to go back, but because I missed the feeling of belonging, the sense that everything was right in the world. I missed the past, but I also knew I could not live there. I could not stay trapped in old memories, no matter how comforting they seemed. The present was different, harder, but also full of possibilities. I thought about the person I was then, naive, hopeful, trusting, and the person I am now, wiser, stronger, more cautious. It was strange to see how much I had changed. Sometimes I felt proud of my growth. Other times, I mourned the loss of innocence. One afternoon, I met an old friend for coffee. She listened patiently as I talked about my feelings. She said something that stayed with me. Missing the past is natural. It means you have lived fully, but do not forget to live now. Her words were gentle, but they carried truth. I realized that I needed to find a way to carry my past with me, without letting it weigh me down. I began writing in a journal, capturing my thoughts and memories. It helped me feel less alone. To put the past into words was to give it a place, but not let it control me. I also started taking small walks in nature. The fresh air, the sound of birds, the rustling trees, they reminded me that life continues, that every ending leads to a new beginning. I do miss the past, but I am learning to embrace the present, to find peace in what is, and to hope for what can be. Because, even though the past shaped me, it does not define me. I am more than my memories. I am still here, still growing, still moving forward. After days of carrying the heavy weight of silence and pain, I finally reached out to Sarah, my oldest and dearest friend. It felt strange at first. I had always been the one to listen, to support others. Now, I needed someone to listen to me. Sarah answered the phone with her usual warmth. Her voice was calm and steady, like a safe place. I told her everything, the confusion, the heartbreak, the fear of what the future might hold. I spoke slowly, trying to put into words the emotions that sometimes felt too big to understand. She did not interrupt. She did not rush me. Instead, she let me speak, letting my story unfold like a fragile thread. Her presence on the other end of the line was comforting. It reminded me that I was not alone. When I finished, Sarah shared her own stories of struggle, loss, and healing. Hearing her vulnerability helped me feel less isolated. It showed me that pain is a part of life, but so is hope. She reminded me gently that it was okay to feel angry and sad, that those feelings did not make me weak. On the contrary, they showed that I cared deeply. Sarah's words were like a balm for my soul. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, about childhood memories, funny moments, and dreams for the future. It was the first time in a long while that I laughed without guilt. After our conversation, I felt a small shift inside me, a glimmer of light in the darkness. It was not a sudden cure, but a beginning, a sign that healing might be possible. In the days that followed, I made more time for friends like Sarah. I learned that talking, really talking, can ease the pain. It does not erase it, but it helps carry it. I also realized that I needed to be honest with myself, to admit my fears and doubts without judgment, to accept that healing is not linear. Some days are harder than others, and that is okay. Talking to Sarah helped me find my voice again. It reminded me that I am stronger than I think, that I am worthy of love and kindness, from others and from myself. It was a small but powerful step forward, and it gave me hope for the days ahead. Part 17. I say goodbye. Saying goodbye was harder than I ever imagined. It was not just about leaving a place or a person. It was about letting go of a dream I had held on to for years, a dream of family, trust, and a future that now felt broken. The day I decided to say goodbye, I woke up early. The morning air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of rain from the night before. I packed a small bag with the essentials, clothes, a few photographs, a journal I had started writing in. Each item I packed felt like a memory I was closing a chapter on. I did not know what awaited me, but I knew I needed to step forward. The weight of uncertainty pressed on me, but so did a quiet resolve. Before I left, I went through the house one last time, I touched the walls, the furniture, the places where laughter and tears had once lived. I whispered a soft goodbye to each corner, each shadow. The house was more than just a building. It was a witness to my life, both the joy and the pain. I thought about Ethan, about all the years we had shared, the promises made and the promises broken. I did not hate him, but I could no longer carry the hurt he caused. I needed peace. For myself. Saying goodbye was not a moment but a process. It unfolded slowly, over weeks and months. There were days when the memories hit me like a storm, and tears fell freely. Other days I felt numb, as if my heart was wrapped in cotton. I told a few close friends about my decision. Their support was a lifeline. They reminded me that goodbye does not mean the end. Sometimes it means a new beginning. I also wrote letters. Letters I never sent. Letters to Ethan, to the past, and to myself. Writing helped me speak what was hard to say aloud. It was a way to release the pain without causing more harm. One evening, I stood outside watching the sun set behind the trees. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, fading into deep blue. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. I was saying goodbye to a life that no longer served me, but I was also saying hello to the unknown. I told myself that it was okay to grieve. It was okay to be scared, but I would not let fear stop me. Because sometimes saying goodbye is the first step toward healing and toward finding myself again. I was ready to take that step, even if the path ahead was uncertain, even if the pain stayed with me for a while longer. Goodbye was not the end. It was a new beginning. Saying goodbye was harder than I ever imagined. It was not just about leaving a place or a person. It was about letting go of a dream I had held on to for years. A dream of family, trust, and a future that now felt broken. The day I decided to say goodbye, I woke up early. The morning air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of rain from the night before. I packed a small bag with the essentials, clothes, a few photographs, a journal I had started writing in. Each item I packed felt like a memory I was closing a chapter on. I did not know what awaited me, but I knew I needed to step forward. The weight of uncertainty pressed on me, but so did a quiet resolve. Before I left, I went through the house one last time. I touched the walls, the furniture, the places where laughter and tears had once lived. I whispered a soft goodbye to each corner, each shadow. The house was more than just a building. It was a witness to my life, both the joy and the pain. I thought about Ethan, about all the years we had shared. The promises made and the promises broken. I did not hate him, but I could no longer carry the hurt he caused. I needed peace. For myself. Saying goodbye was not a moment but a process. It unfolded slowly, over weeks and months. There were days when the memories hit me like a storm and tears fell freely. Other days, I felt numb, as if my heart was wrapped in cotton. I told a few close friends about my decision. Their support was a lifeline. They reminded me that goodbye does not mean the end. Sometimes it means a new beginning. I also wrote letters I never sent, letters to Ethan, to the past, and to myself. Writing helped me speak what was hard to say aloud. It was a way to release the pain without causing more harm. One evening, I stood outside watching the sun set behind the trees. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, fading into deep blue. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. I was saying goodbye to a life that no longer served me, but I was also saying hello to the unknown. I told myself that it was okay to grieve. It was okay to be scared. But I would not let fear stop me. Because sometimes, saying goodbye is the first step toward healing and toward finding myself again. I was ready to take that step. Even if the path ahead was uncertain, even if the pain stayed with me for a while longer. Goodbye was not the end. It was a new beginning. The house felt emptier than ever. Silence filled every room like a heavy fog. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. It was a strange feeling, both terrifying and strangely peaceful. At first, the quiet unsettled me. I was used to the sounds of family, footsteps, laughter, even the occasional argument. Now, there was only stillness. It echoed through the halls and in my mind. I could almost hear the memories whispering, but there was no one else to listen. I spent many evenings sitting by the window, watching the world move outside while I remained still inside. Sometimes the loneliness felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I wondered if I had made a mistake by stepping away, by choosing solitude over company. But with time, I began to notice something new. Without distractions or noise, I could finally hear myself. I could feel my thoughts clearly. I realized I had spent so long trying to please others, hiding my true feelings. Now there was no one to hide from. Only me. At first, meeting myself was uncomfortable. I faced doubts and fears I had ignored for years, the questions that kept me awake at night. Am I enough? Can I be happy alone? What do I truly want? Surfaced in full force. Yet slowly, I started to answer them. I discovered a quiet strength I did not know I possessed. A calm confidence that came from accepting who I was, flaws and all. Being alone was no longer a punishment. It was a chance to heal. I began to fill my days with small acts of kindness to myself. I cooked meals I enjoyed. I read books I had long forgotten. I took walks without a destination, simply to breathe fresh air and feel the sun on my skin. Sometimes I cried. Other times I smiled. Both felt natural. I even found joy in simple things. The warmth of a cup of tea, the scent of blooming flowers, the sound of birdsong in the morning. I learned to be patient with myself, to embrace silence instead of fearing it, and to understand that being alone does not mean being lonely. It means having the space to reconnect with the person I had lost along the way. I was alone now, but I was not empty. I was growing. I was becoming whole again. I woke up one morning and noticed something different inside me. It was not a loud or sudden change, but a quiet, steady shift. I was not the same woman I had been months ago. I had changed, in ways I could feel deep in my bones. The pain had not disappeared. It still lingered like a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. But now, it did not control me. Instead, it had become part of my story, a reminder of what I had survived. I looked in the mirror and saw a face that had known heartache, but also strength. The lines around my eyes seemed deeper, but they also told a story of wisdom. I could see the woman who had cried and doubted, but who had also learned to stand tall again. I realized that healing is not about forgetting the past. It is about accepting it and allowing it to shape who we become. I began to notice small changes in how I moved through the world. I held my head a little higher. I spoke with more confidence. I stopped apologizing for taking up space or for having needs. My relationships also changed. I set new boundaries. I stopped giving my energy to those who drained me. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who respected my journey and my growth. I also found new ways to express myself, through writing, painting, and even volunteering. These activities gave me purpose beyond my pain. They helped me connect with others and reminded me that I still had much to offer. Sometimes old fears tried to creep back in. Doubts whispered that I was not strong enough or that I would be hurt again. But I met those fears with kindness, telling myself that it was okay to be afraid, and that I could still choose hope. I was learning that growth is not perfect or linear. There were good days and hard days, but every day was a step forward. This new version of myself was not defined by loss or betrayal. She was defined by resilience, by courage, by love, both given and received. I was not the same woman who had started this journey. I was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone ready to embrace the future, whatever it might bring. And that knowledge gave me peace. It gave me hope. It gave me the power to keep moving forward. For a long time, I lived in the darkness of my pain and uncertainty. The days blended together, heavy with sadness and doubt. But one quiet moment changed everything. It was small, almost invisible at first. Just a faint flicker deep inside me. I call it my small light. I remember the day clearly. The sky was gray and overcast, and the air felt heavy with the threat of rain. I was sitting alone in the garden, wrapped in a soft shawl. The flowers had begun to bloom, even in the chill of early spring. Their colors were muted, but they were alive. That simple sight struck a chord within me. I realized that life was still moving forward. The world was still turning, even if my own heart felt stuck. The small buds on the branches, the first warm breeze, the quiet hum of birds. These were signs of new beginnings. I could choose to notice them or let them pass by unnoticed. That day, I made a small promise to myself. I would look for the light, no matter how faint it seemed. I would let it guide me through the dark times. The small light was not a grand event or a sudden breakthrough. It was a feeling, a tiny spark of hope that told me I was not alone. It reminded me that healing is possible, even when it feels impossible. After that moment, I began to see more small lights around me. A smile from a stranger, the warmth of a cup of tea, a kind word from a friend. These little moments became beacons of hope. I started to carry them with me like treasures. The small light also helped me face my fears. I was still afraid of being hurt again, of trusting too much, of losing myself in others. But the light gave me courage to try. It told me that even if I stumbled, I could rise again. I also found strength in simple routines. Walking in the morning, sunlight, writing in my journal, listening to music that touched my soul. These acts grounded me. They reminded me that I could nurture myself. Sometimes, the darkness returned with full force. Some days were harder than others. I cried more than I smiled. I questioned if the small light was enough. But then I would. Remember that light does not have to be bright to be real. Even the faintest glow can guide us through the night. I started to share my light with others. I volunteered at a local community center, offering my time and listening ear. Helping others gave me purpose and connection. It reminded me that we are all carrying our own small lights, struggling through our own shadows. In those moments, I felt less alone. I felt part of something bigger than myself. My small light also helped me rebuild my relationship with my son, Ethan. We did not erase the past overnight, but we began to have honest conversations. I listened to him without judgment, and he started to see me as a person, not just a mother, but a woman with her own story. It was not easy. There were setbacks and misunderstandings, but the light kept us moving forward. I learned to be patient with the process and with myself. Most importantly, the small light helped me remember who I truly was beneath the pain. A woman with hopes, dreams, and the power to create a new future. I still carry the small light today. It is not a promise that everything will be perfect, but a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope exists. Sometimes, I close my eyes and feel the light glowing softly within me. It comforts me like a warm embrace. It whispers that I am enough, that I am worthy of love and happiness, and I believe it. That small light, a quiet hope, has become the beginning of my new life. One step, one breath, one day at a time. Starting over is never easy, especially when you carry the weight of past pain and broken trust. Yet, I found myself standing at the edge of a new beginning, ready to take the first step. It was not a dramatic moment or a sudden decision. Instead, it was quiet, simple, and full of hope. I began by focusing on myself. For years, I had put everyone else first. My son, my family, even people I barely knew. Now, I realized that if I wanted to heal, I had to take care of my own needs first. It felt strange at first, even selfish, but I knew it was necessary. I started small. I made a morning routine that I could look forward to. Every day, I woke up a little earlier to sit with my cup of tea. I watched the sunlight through the window and let myself breathe deeply. These few minutes were mine alone, a quiet moment before the day's demands began. I also began to write again. Words had been my refuge when I was younger, but I had stopped for many years. Now, writing helped me make sense of my feelings. I did not worry about grammar or style. I wrote simply, honestly, as if I were talking to a close friend. Slowly, I started to add more self-care to my life. I took walks in the park, feeling the fresh air on my face. I listened to music that lifted my spirit. I even tried yoga, which helped me reconnect with my body and calm my restless mind. Each new habit was a small victory. They were steps toward rebuilding a life that felt whole and true to me. But beginning again was not just about self-care. It was also about setting boundaries. I learned to say no when something did not feel right. I stopped answering calls or messages that left me anxious. I gave myself permission to protect my peace. It was difficult at first. Old patterns and fears whispered that I should keep everyone happy, that I was being too hard or too distant. But I reminded myself that boundaries were acts of love for myself and for those around me. Healthy boundaries create respect and understanding. Another important part of beginning again was reconnecting with people who truly cared. I reached out to friends I had lost touch with. Some relationships needed time to heal, and some could not be saved. But others blossomed into new sources of support and joy. I also met new people who inspired me with their kindness and strength. Their stories reminded me that I was not alone. Many others had faced pain and loss, but found ways to move forward. As I built a new community around me, I felt my confidence grow. I began to trust myself more. My instincts, my feelings, and my decisions. This was not to say I was completely free from doubt. There were days when the past still haunted me, when loneliness crept in like a cold shadow, when the future seemed uncertain and frightening. But on those days, I returned to my small light. I held on to that quiet hope that had begun to glow inside me. It reminded me that every day was a chance to try again. I also learned to celebrate small successes. I did not wait for big achievements or perfect moments. I found joy in small things. A kind word, a peaceful morning, a smile shared with a stranger. Beginning again was a process, not a single event. It required patience, courage, and faith. I understood that healing is not a straight path. It is full of twists, turns, and sometimes steps backward. But with each step forward, I reclaimed pieces of myself. I was no longer the woman trapped by fear and betrayal. I was becoming someone new, someone who could love, hope, and dream again. Most importantly, I was learning to believe in myself. I began to make plans for the future. Not rigid or fixed plans, but dreams and goals that excited me. I thought about traveling, learning new skills, maybe even starting a small business. These ideas filled me with energy and purpose. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Starting again was not about forgetting the past or pretending everything was perfect. It was about accepting my story, every painful, beautiful part, and choosing to move forward with courage. I knew the road ahead would have challenges, but I was ready, because I had learned that the most important journey is the one we take within ourselves. And now, I was beginning that journey with hope, strength, and a heart open to new possibilities. After I'd begun to find my own strength and rebuild my life, he suddenly appeared again. It was a quiet morning when the phone rang. The number was familiar, but I did not want to believe it was him. Still, I answered. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. He said he wanted to talk, to explain, to make things right. For a moment, my heart wavered. I remembered the years we shared, the good times before everything broke apart. I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had changed. But deep inside, I felt a shadow of doubt. He said he missed me, and that he was sorry for the pain he had caused. He asked if we could meet and try to fix what was broken. I did not say yes or no immediately. I told him I needed time to think. In the days that followed, I felt a storm of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe in forgiveness, in second chances. Another part was afraid of being hurt again. I questioned everything. My judgment, my feelings, my ability to protect myself. I remembered the long nights of tears, the silent pain, and the loss of trust. I knew that if I opened the door to him again, I might be opening a door to more pain. Yet I also felt that life was not about holding on to anger forever. People change. Situations change. Was I willing to give him that chance? Or was I stronger by standing firm and choosing myself? Every time my phone rang, I felt nervous. He sent messages filled with regret and hope. Sometimes I wanted to respond. Sometimes I wanted to ignore him completely. I talked to my close friends about this. They reminded me to listen to my heart and trust my instincts. They told me it was okay to be cautious, to protect myself first. Finally, I agreed to meet him in a public place. The moment I saw him, a flood of memories came rushing back, both painful and beautiful. We talked for hours. He explained what had happened, the mistakes he made, and the lessons he learned. But as the conversation went on, I realized that some things had not changed. The fears I had were real. I could feel the same hesitation in his words, the same hesitation in his actions. I understood that trust is not rebuilt in a day. It takes time, patience, and honesty. More importantly, it requires consistent actions, not just words. I decided to take things slowly. I told him I was willing to try, but only if he was ready to be honest and respectful of my feelings. I needed to see real change, not just promises. During this time, I stayed grounded in my own growth. I continued my routines, my self-care, and my writing. I reminded myself that my happiness did not depend on him, but on me. There were moments of hope when it felt like maybe we could find a new path together, but there were also moments of doubt and sadness. In the end, I learned an important lesson. Forgiveness and healing are gifts I give to myself, not just to others. I learned that love must be mutual and respectful to survive. Whether or not our story would have a future, I knew that I had become a stronger, wiser woman. I was no longer afraid to face the past or the future. I was ready to choose myself, always. I did not realize how much I had changed until I stood in front of the mirror one quiet evening. The reflection that stared back at me was not the same woman who had once depended on others for her happiness and security. She was stronger, more certain. Someone who had learned, through pain and silence, how to stand alone and be whole. For years, I had lived in the shadow of doubt and disappointment. I had allowed the actions and words of others, especially his, to shape my sense of worth. But now those old fears and insecurities seemed distant, like echoes from a life I no longer lived. It was as if a heavy cloak had been lifted from my shoulders, revealing a person I barely recognized but deeply admired. I thought about the times when I felt broken, the nights when tears blurred my vision, and the mornings when I had to convince myself to get out of bed. Those moments, though painful, had been necessary. They were the fires that forged my resilience. I realized I was not defined by what had happened to me, but by how I had responded. I began to see myself through a new lens. Instead of focusing on what I had lost, I focused on what I had gained. Wisdom, patience, and a quiet strength that no one could take away. I understood now that growth is not linear. It is messy and slow, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs. But every step I took was mine, and that made all the difference. I started to notice small changes in my daily life. I spoke with more confidence and less fear. I set boundaries without guilt. I chose my words carefully, honoring my feelings instead of suppressing them. When challenges came, I faced them head-on instead of running away or hiding. The people around me began to notice the change too. Friends commented on my calmness, my steady presence. Even my son seemed to respect the woman I was becoming, though we still had many unspoken words between us. It was a delicate balance, being close, yet distant, loving, yet cautious. One afternoon, as I walked through the park, I felt the sun warm my face and the breeze gently brush my skin. I realized I was at peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from forgetting pain, but the kind that comes from accepting it and moving forward anyway. I smiled softly, grateful for the journey that had brought me here. Looking back, I could see the moments when I had almost given up, but chose instead to keep going. Those choices had shaped me more than any hardship. I was no longer afraid to be alone because I had learned to enjoy my own company. I no longer needed others to validate my worth because I had found it within myself. This new version of me was not perfect. I still had fears and doubts, but they no longer controlled me. I embraced my imperfections as part of my story, not obstacles to overcome. I was learning to love myself fully, with kindness and patience. I thought about the future with hope instead of fear. I planned small steps for myself, new hobbies, new friendships, and perhaps someday new love. But most importantly, I planned to continue growing, no matter what life brought. This journey had taught me that true strength comes from within. It comes from the willingness to face pain, to forgive, to heal, and to choose oneself every day. I was proud of who I had become, a woman who had found her voice and would never be silenced again. As I closed my journal that evening, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the past, with all its lessons, for the present, with its calm and clarity, and for the future, with all its possibilities. I was different now, and I was ready for whatever came next. For a long time, I believed that my happiness depended on others, on their approval, their love, their acceptance. I spent years trying to fit into roles that were not mine, bending myself in ways that hurt more than helped. But now, after everything that had happened, I finally understood something very important. I must choose myself. Not in selfishness, but in kindness and respect for my own heart. Choosing myself meant more than just making a decision. It was a daily practice of listening to my feelings, honoring my needs, and protecting my peace. It was saying no to the things that drained me and yes to the things that nurtured me. It was learning to be gentle with my own mistakes and patient with my growth. The first step was waking up each morning and reminding myself that I mattered, that my dreams, my feelings, and my well-being were just as important as anyone else's. I stopped putting my son's expectations above my own health. I realized that to love him truly, I needed to love myself first. At times, this was incredibly difficult. Old habits die slowly. The voices of doubt, guilt, and fear tried to pull me back into familiar patterns. They whispered that choosing myself meant I was weak or selfish or giving up. But I knew better. I knew that real strength was in setting boundaries and standing firm. One evening, I sat in my quiet living room, the soft light of the lamp casting warm shadows. I thought about all the moments when I had felt invisible, unheard, or unimportant. I felt tears welling up, but this time they were different. They were not tears of defeat, but of release. Release from the heavy chains of others' opinions. Release from the need to prove myself. I began to say no more often. No to invitations that felt like obligations. No to conversations that brought me pain without resolution. No to the guilt that had once wrapped around me like a thick fog. Each no was a small victory. Each no was a step toward freedom. Choosing myself also meant forgiving. Forgiving those who hurt me, yes, but also forgiving myself. I forgave myself for the times I stayed silent when I should have spoken up, for the times I doubted my worth, for the times I allowed others to define me. With forgiveness came peace. I could finally breathe deeply without the weight of anger or sadness pressing down. I found joy in simple things. Morning sunlight through the curtains, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of birds outside my window. These small moments became reminders that life was still beautiful. I started taking better care of my body and mind. I walked in the park every day, feeling the earth beneath my feet. I read books that inspired me. I practiced meditation to calm my restless thoughts. Slowly, I rebuilt my strength. Not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Sometimes, my son would call. Our conversations were cautious but respectful. I did not rush or force closeness. I let time and my own steady presence speak for me. I realized that choosing myself did not mean closing the door to him. It meant opening a new kind of door, one based on honesty and self-respect. At work, I took on new challenges that excited me. I stopped doubting my abilities and began to trust my instincts. I surrounded myself with people who encouraged and supported me. Their kindness reminded me that I was worthy of love and respect. One day, as I looked out at the city skyline, from my apartment window I felt a deep sense of pride. I had come so far from the woman who had felt lost and powerless. I was now someone who owned her story and her future. I chose to be happy, not because life was perfect, but because I deserved joy. This choice, I knew, was not a one-time event. It was a journey I would walk for the rest of my life. There would be hard days and moments of doubt, but I would meet them with the courage I had found within. I chose myself today, and I would choose myself every day after. The morning light came softly through the curtains, painting the room with a gentle glow that felt different this time. It was not just another morning. It was a new day, a fresh start, a chance to breathe without the weight of yesterday pressing down on my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the cool sheets against my skin, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. It was not because I had forgotten all the pain or the hard moments. It was because I had survived them. I had lived through the storm, and now I was standing in the calm that followed. That morning, I did not rush to check my phone or the news. I took my time. I made a cup of tea, feeling the warmth in my hands. I opened the window just a little and listened to the birds singing. The city was waking up, and so was I. Slowly, I began to feel a quiet strength inside me, a sense of peace I had not known in years. I thought about everything I had been through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the moments when I had cried myself to sleep, feeling lost and scared. And yet, here I was, still standing, still breathing, still hoping. That was a powerful truth. It reminded me that even when life breaks us, it also gives us a chance to heal. I remembered the times I had tried to hold on too tightly, to the past, to people who did not value me, to pain that no longer served me. I realized those struggles had made me who I am today. They had shown me my own resilience, my own courage, and I was proud of that. That day, I decided to take small steps toward building a life that was truly mine. I started by cleaning the apartment, putting away things that no longer brought me joy. Each item I moved felt like letting go of a little more weight. It was not just physical clutter. It was emotional clutter, too. I made space for new memories, new hopes. I also began writing again. Words had always been a refuge for me, a way to make sense of my thoughts and feelings. I took out my notebook and wrote about the journey I had been on. I wrote about the pain, but also the healing, about the lessons learned and the strength discovered. Writing helped me connect with myself, and it reminded me that my story mattered. In the afternoon, I went for a walk in the park near my home. The fresh air filled my lungs, and the sunlight warmed my face. I watched families laughing, children playing, and couples holding hands. Life was moving all around me, full of simple joys and quiet moments. I felt a part of it again. As I walked, I thought about forgiveness, not just forgiving others, but forgiving myself. I forgave myself for the times I had doubted my worth, for the times I had been too afraid to speak up, for the times I had stayed silent when I should have been loud. Forgiveness was not easy, but it was necessary. It was a gift I gave to myself. That evening, I cooked a simple dinner and sat down to eat without rushing. I felt grateful for the food, for the quiet, for the chance to rest. I did not feel lonely. I felt connected to myself, to the world, and to the future. Before going to bed, I looked out the window again. The city lights twinkled like stars. I whispered a promise to myself. Tomorrow is a new day. I will face it with hope. I will choose joy. I will live for me. This new day was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own path with strength, love, and courage. I smiled once more, feeling a deep sense of peace. I had survived the darkness. Now, I was ready to embrace the light. There are moments in life when gratitude comes quietly, like a gentle breeze that touches your soul without any noise or fanfare. Today was one of those moments for me. After everything I had been through, the pain, the betrayal, the long nights of doubt, I found myself sitting alone in my living room, looking around at this home I had almost given up on. And instead of sadness, I felt a warm glow of thankfulness. I said thank you. Not to anyone in particular at first, just quietly to myself. Thank you for the strength to keep going when it felt impossible. Thank you for the courage to face the truth even when it hurt. Thank you for the small victories that no one else saw, but that mattered so much to me. Saying thank you was not about forgetting the past. It was about honoring my journey, the good and the bad, and recognizing that every step had brought me to this place. I thought about my son, about the fight we had, the distance that had grown between us. It was hard to admit, but even in the darkest moments, I knew there was something to be grateful for. The chance to learn, to grow, and to find my own power. I was thankful for the lessons that came wrapped in pain, because they showed me who I really was beneath the hurt. That day, I also thanked my friends, the ones who stood by me quietly, offering listening ears and kind words without judgment. Sometimes, just knowing someone is there can make the heaviest burden a little lighter. Their support was a gift I did not take for granted. I remembered the times I had hesitated to ask for help, too proud or too afraid. But now I saw that reaching out was a sign of strength, not weakness. As I sat with my gratitude, I realized how much I had changed. I was not the same woman who had cried alone in the dark. I was stronger, wiser, and more patient with myself. Saying thank you was part of that change. a way to acknowledge my own growth and to open my heart to the future. I also thought about forgiveness, which felt connected to gratitude in a strange way. When I forgave myself and others, I could finally say thank you for the healing that followed. Forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing hurtful actions. It was about freeing myself from the chains of anger and regret and making space for peace. Saying thank you was a step toward that peace. That evening, I wrote a letter to myself. It was a letter of thanks for surviving, for believing in better days, and for choosing to love even when it was hard. Writing those words felt like wrapping myself in a warm blanket, safe, cared for, and understood. I knew the road ahead would still have challenges. Healing is not a straight line, and sometimes the past calls back in unexpected ways. But I was ready to face those moments with a heart full of gratitude. Gratitude was a shield and a light, guiding me forward when the path seemed unclear. Before I went to bed, I stood by the window and looked at the stars. The sky was wide and endless, full of possibilities. I whispered softly, "Thank you for this new beginning. Thank you for the strength I did not know I had. Thank you for the love I am ready to give and receive." And with that, I felt a deep calm settle inside me. Gratitude had become my quiet companion, steady, gentle, and true. It reminded me that no matter what life brings, there is always something to be thankful for, and in that thanks, there is hope. I closed my eyes and let myself rest, knowing that tomorrow I would wake up ready to say thank you again. Because every new day is a gift, and I was learning to open it with an open heart. There are times when silence says more than words ever could. After the storm of emotions, accusations, and arguments, I found myself in a quiet space where everything felt still, almost too still. The house was peaceful, but inside me, the silence roared. It was the kind of silence that fills the gaps left by broken conversations and unanswered questions. For days, I avoided calling my son. I wasn't sure if he wanted to hear from me or if I even had the right to reach out. The pride and pain battled inside me, but that silence was loud. Too loud. It echoed in every room, reminding me of all the things left unsaid, all the chances missed. One afternoon, I sat on the old couch in the living room and let the quiet surround me. The sun was fading, and the shadows grew longer. I thought about how silence can be both a shield and a weapon. Sometimes we use it to protect ourselves. Other times it's a barrier that keeps us apart. I remembered when my son was little, how we used to communicate without words, through looks, hugs, and the simple joy of being together. Back then, silence was comfortable and full of love. Now, it felt heavy and cold. That day, I decided to listen to the silence instead of fearing it. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I asked myself what the silence was trying to tell me. Was it fear? Was it pain? Or was it hope waiting to be heard? Slowly, I realized the silence was not empty. It was full of meaning, waiting for me to understand. It spoke of the distance between us, but also of the possibility to bridge that distance. It whispered that healing takes time, but it also promised that love can find its way back if we are patient. I thought about my own silence, the times I held back my feelings because I was afraid to be vulnerable. I saw now how silence can build. walls around our hearts, but it can also be a space where we find clarity and strength. Later that evening, I wrote a letter to my son. I didn't send it right away. Instead, I kept it close, reading it over and over until I felt ready. The words were simple but honest, an invitation to open the door, to start talking again, to break the silence with kindness. The next morning, I made a decision. I called him. My heart was pounding as I waited for him to answer. When I heard his voice, soft but real, a wave of relief washed over me. The silence was broken. We didn't solve everything in that first call. There were still hurt feelings and misunderstandings to work through. But the silence no longer separated us. It became a space where new conversations could begin. From that day on, I learned to respect silence, not as an enemy, but as a part of the journey. Sometimes, silence is needed to heal, to listen, and to find the words that really matter. No, the road ahead is not easy. There will be moments when silence returns, when it feels like the distance is growing again. But I also know that silence, when understood and honored, can become the quiet strength that holds us together. This is the story of how I learned that silence speaks louder than words, but love can speak louder than silence. It is a lesson in patience, forgiveness, and hope, a lesson I carry with me every day. Taking the first step back after a long fall feels almost impossible. After all the distance, the silence, and the pain, reaching out can seem like walking into a storm without a clear path. But I knew that if I wanted to heal my relationship with my son, I had to begin somewhere, even if it meant starting with something small and fragile. The day after our first call, I felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Hope, because hearing his voice reminded me there was still a connection beneath the hurt. Fear, because I knew the road to repairing what was broken would be long and filled with uncertainty. I kept reminding myself that healing takes time, and no matter how hard it might be, the first step was the hardest but also the most important. I sent him a message, a simple note telling him I was thinking of him and that I was ready to listen whenever he felt ready to talk. I didn't expect an immediate response. I didn't want to rush him or force things. I wanted to show him that I respected his space, but that I was there, waiting patiently. Days passed. Some were filled with silence, others with little signs of life. A short reply here, a small question there. Each one felt like a tiny thread, slowly weaving us back together. I realized then that rebuilding trust is not a giant leap, but many small steps, each one important and meaningful. During this time, I started reflecting deeply on my own feelings and actions. I asked myself hard questions. Where had I gone wrong? What could I have done differently? How could I better understand my son's point of view? These reflections weren't easy. It hurt to face my mistakes, to admit that maybe I hadn't been as patient or as understanding as I thought. But it was necessary. I began to write down my thoughts, hopes, and apologies. Writing became my way of sorting through the tangled emotions. I wasn't writing to blame anyone, but to find clarity and peace inside myself. I wanted to be ready, not just to speak, but to truly listen when the time came. One afternoon, I received a longer message from him. He said he appreciated that I was reaching out, that it made him feel less alone in this. He shared some of his own struggles, his fears, and why he had pushed me away. Reading his words was painful, but also healing. It helped me understand the walls he had built and the pain he had been carrying silently. We agreed to meet, slowly, carefully. No pressure, no big expectations. Just two people trying to find their way back to each other. The thought of seeing him again brought a flood of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and a cautious hope. The day of our meeting, I prepared myself quietly. I didn't want to overwhelm him or myself. I brought a small gift, nothing fancy, just something to show I cared. When I saw him, older and changed but still my son, I felt a wave of love and sadness all at once. We talked for hours. Not about the big things all at once, but about the small moments, memories, everyday stories, little joys. It was awkward sometimes, but it was real. We laughed, we cried, and slowly, the distance between us started to shrink. That meeting was just the beginning. It didn't fix everything, but it opened the door. Since then, we have taken many small steps forward, some days better than others. We're learning to listen, to forgive, and to rebuild what was broken. I have learned that the first step back is never easy, but it is always worth it. It takes courage to face the past and hope to believe in the future. And sometimes, all it takes is one small step to start a new journey of healing and love. Trust is a fragile thing. After everything that happened between my son and me, I knew rebuilding trust would be the hardest part. It felt like we were standing on the edge of a very deep canyon. One wrong step, and the whole thing could fall apart again. But despite the fear, I also knew that trust was the foundation we had to rebuild if we ever wanted to move forward. In the weeks after our first meeting, I found myself watching for small signs. Did he answer my calls right away? Or did he wait? Did he share little pieces of his life, or keep things close to his chest? Every small gesture mattered, because they were like bricks being laid carefully, one by one. I learned to appreciate the small moments, a smile when I walked into the room, a quick thank you when I made coffee, even the way he listened without interrupting. For my part, I had to be patient and consistent. I stopped trying to fix things all at once, or force deep conversations before he was ready. Instead, I focused on showing up, being present, reliable, and honest. I promised myself I wouldn't bring up past mistakes unless he was ready to talk about them. It was hard to hold back sometimes because I wanted to explain, to apologize, and to make everything right immediately, but I knew healing couldn't be rushed. One afternoon, he invited me to join him for a walk. It felt like a small victory, even though it was just a simple walk in the park near his apartment. We didn't talk much at first. We just walked side by side, watching the leaves fall and listening to the quiet sounds around us. Slowly, he started sharing stories from his work and his friends. Little things he hadn't told me before. I could see that trust was growing, like a seed breaking through the soil, reaching for the sun. But trust is not a straight path. There were days when he would pull away, retreating into silence or frustration. I had to remind myself not to take it personally. Sometimes his hurt was deeper than I could understand. Sometimes he was angry at himself or at the world, and I was just one piece of that complicated puzzle. I also had to learn to trust him again. After everything that had happened, it was hard not to worry or doubt his intentions. But if I wanted our relationship to work, I had to give him space to prove himself, to show me who he was now, not who he had been in those painful moments. Trust, I realized, was a two-way street. During this time, I started attending a support group for parents who had experienced family conflicts. Listening to others' stories made me feel less alone. It also helped me see that what we were going through was common, even if it felt unique and overwhelming. The group taught me the importance of boundaries, forgiveness, and self-care. I learned that to be a good mother to my son, I also had to be kind to myself. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, I sat down to write him a letter. I didn't send it right away. Instead, I used it to put my feelings into words. My hopes, my regrets, and my commitment to keep trying. Writing helped me sort through the tangled emotions and gave me the courage to keep going. Weeks later, when I finally gave him the letter, he read it slowly. Then, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I'm sorry for everything. Mom, I want to try too." Those words felt like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky. From that moment, we began to build a new kind of relationship, one based on honesty, patience, and small acts of kindness. We celebrated the little victories and supported each other through setbacks. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect, but it was ours to walk together. Learning to trust again taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, love means waiting quietly, believing without seeing, and being willing to forgive. It means showing up even when it's hard, and choosing hope over fear. And most of all, it means understanding that trust is not given freely, but earned through time, respect, and genuine care. I still have days when the old pain tries to creep back in, but I hold on to the progress we've made. My son and I are not the same people we were before, but that is okay. We are learning, growing, and healing, step by step, day by day. And that makes all the difference. Rebuilding my relationship with my son felt like crossing a long, shaky bridge. Every step required care, balance, and hope that the other side was still there. Even as we started to trust each other again, there were moments when it seemed the bridge might collapse under the weight of old wounds and fresh doubts. One day, weeks after we'd begun to reconnect, I received an unexpected message from him. It was short and simple, but it shook me deeply. "Mom, can we talk about something important?" I felt my heart race. Was he ready to finally share what had been on his mind for so long? Was he ready to take our fragile bond even further? When we met at a quiet cafe, I could see the nervousness in his eyes, the way he fidgeted with his coffee cup. I knew this wasn't just casual conversation. He took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about everything between us, and I want to tell you something I've been holding back." I nodded slowly, encouraging him without pressure. He looked down for a moment, then back up at me. "I was angry," he admitted. "Angry at you, at myself, at how things fell apart. But I also felt lost, like I didn't know who I was without that anger. I didn't know how to ask for help, or if I even deserved it." Hearing those words hit me harder than I expected. It was as if I was finally seeing the full weight of his pain, the deep struggle behind his distance and silence. "I want to try again," he continued, voice trembling. "But I'm scared that I'll hurt you again, or that you'll give up on me. I don't want to lose you." For the first time in months, tears filled my eyes. I reached across the table and held his hand. "I won't give up on you," I promised. "We both made mistakes, but we're here now, trying. That's what matters." In that moment, something shifted between us, an unspoken understanding that even though the past was painful, the future still held hope. We both knew the road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but we were willing to walk it together. Over the next few weeks, our conversations grew deeper. He opened up about his fears, his hopes, and the mistakes he wanted to fix. I shared my own feelings, the loneliness, the guilt, and the love that never faded. It wasn't easy. Sometimes we disagreed or misunderstood each other. But we kept trying. One evening, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. It was a small gesture, but it felt huge to me. The walls that once felt cold and closed off now held warmth and light. We cooked together, laughed over old stories, and talked late into the night. That night, as I lay in the guest room, I realized something important. Healing isn't about forgetting the past or pretending everything is perfect. It's about accepting the pain, learning from it, and choosing to build something new, even if it feels uncertain. The bridge between us was still shaky, but with every step we took, it grew stronger. I felt grateful for the chance to walk it, to rebuild a relationship I thought was lost forever. Sometimes, the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. And for me, that gift was the chance to reconnect with my son, to bridge the gap that once seemed impossible to cross.